Hello and welcome to the channel. As always, like the video, and if you enjoyed the story, leave a comment on if you would want more. This fanfiction was not created by me, but in the description there is a link to the fanfic so you can show your support to the creator and read along. Without any more delay, let's dive into the story.
Izuku! Inko's worried voice cried out when the boy walked into their apartment, being assaulted by a tight hug from the woman. Gently he wrapped his arms around her as well, JJ walking in after him nervously. "Are you okay?" "All I heard from ectoplasm was there was a villain attack happening and I was so worried." "You're not hurt, are you? Was it the ones who attacked you before?" "What's dash?" "Mom, give me a second." The greenette said, slowly parting from her. Looking behind her he saw ectoplasm standing guard behind her, ready to jump in. Midoriya sighed as he turned to face his new friend. "Before anything, I want you to meet JJ. Hello, Miss Midoriya." The Splixen said with a nervous wave. "Oh, why hello there. I don't believe I've met you before." The woman said, crouching down to shake her hand. "I'd be more surprised if you did, Mom. JJ isn't from Earth, so..." "Wait, what?" Inko quickly bolted up at that, looking at her son. Then a knowing glint appeared in her eyes. "Then does that mean, your watch really does?" "Yeah, All Might's theory was right." The Omnitrix bearer nodded, lifting up said watch. "Everything in here is part of different alien species. In fact, I got a few new ones today." "Does someone want to explain what you're all talking about?" Ectoplasm asked from the back, confused. Midoriya scratched the back of his head nervously as he started making his way to the kitchen. "Yeah, but before that let's eat," the boy suggested as he did so, looking back to the alien girl behind him. "After all, we need to find out what JJ can eat anyways." "So what exactly is happening anyways with me?" she asked quietly, keeping close to the greenette. "I mean, I know that Nizu person said I'd be welcome, but I still have a spare bed in my room, so you can stay here for now. Is that okay, Mom?" "Huh? Well, yes, I suppose so, but why exactly does she have to?" Inko inquired, confused, only for Midoriya and JJ to share a look. "It's a bit of a long story." Later that night, after Midoriya had gotten through the long process of explaining everything that had happened to his mother and dealt with the many fainting spells that came with that, he'd retired to his room with JJ. The Splixen had been thankful when the Omnitrix bearer had let her go to bed pretty much as soon as they walked in, exhausted from the day's events. Midoriya himself couldn't say he wasn't nervous as sat down at his desk, pulling out his notebook for his aliens and updating parts, as well as adding his new transformations. As he did, his mind kept wandering to the fact he'd have to explain everything to his class. The whole truth about the Omnitrix. He was so not looking forward to that. Eventually, he'd gone to try to sleep when his phone suddenly started vibrating. Picking it up, he saw that it was a call from All Might. He answered it quick, and before he could even ask what was the matter, the blonde began talking. "Come to the hospital wing immediately. It's about one for all." He didn't need to be told twice. The school had an almost eerie atmosphere during the night, with the quiet, seemingly abandoned halls and few flickering lights. The relative silence exacerbating any noise that was made, such as his footsteps. It was like being in a horror movie. With a shudder he put that thought aside and quickly found the infirmary, one of the only places to have its lights and other electronics and such on. He opened the door to find All Might laid up in bed beside a man he didn't know and recovery girl examining some readings he couldn't really see. "Ah, this your successor then, Toshinori?" the unfamiliar man questioned, noticing the boy and prompting the other two to look at him. The blonde nodded with a grin. "Yeah. Young Midoriya, this man here is an old friend of mine from the police force, Detective Tsukachi. Tsukachi, this is Midoriya." The skinny bandaged man introduced, and Midoriya reached over the bed to shake the detective's hand. "Don't worry, kid, he knows about one for all." "Whoa, really?" The teen questioned and the man nodded as J.E. pulled his hand back. Midoriya tugged at his sleeve as turned to his mentor. So, why exactly did you want me to come here? Well, two reasons actually. One, Tsukachi here will need your account on what happened at the USJ today for his investigation. I already prepared him for a lot of it, so you don't need to try to ease into anything. The blonde said with a wave of his hand. Then his gaze turned more serious as he looked up to the greenette. Secondly, I wasn't expecting anything like this to happen. I thought we would have until your third year to finally get you ready, but with what's happened now, I don't think we should put it off any longer. Midoriya, it's time I gave you one for all. Wait, really? But, my body. I won't lie kid, you're not perfectly ready yet. Not to the point you can use the full power without damaging yourself, but you are at the point you should be able to hold it at least. The blonde said, yanking out a strand of his hair. Before I do, I just want you to know that you earned this, kid. You've proven to me time and time again now that no matter what powers you're given, if you are even given any, that you are worthy of being called a hero. Think of this as the embodiment of all that you have accomplished so far. Your reward. He held out his hand as Midoriya felt his heart beat faster. He knew this moment would be coming one day. He knew he'd inherit his mentor's power, but he never expected it to be like this. This was a tremendous occasion. He didn't think anything could ruin this moment. Eat this. He should have known better. To get my power you have to ingest my DNA, that's how it works. Look, this is the least disgusting and questionable way. You do not want to know how one of the previous holders got it. Nope, don't want to know. The boy interrupted quickly, yanking the hair out and just forcing it down to avoid whatever that story would be. He gagged a little as he did, but eventually he managed to eat it. Okay, it's in, what now? Now you'll have to wait for it to digest. Still, aside from that, everything should be fin-. DNA alteration detected. A sudden robotic voice announced, causing everyone's eyes to go wide. Midoriya pulled his wrist up. The Omnitrix was now glowing. Scanning. Omnitrix? Was this alteration intentional? It asked in that odd robotic voice, and the boy looked at the others, who seemed equally as confused. Yes. Yes, it was. No danger detected. Updating human DNA sample. HUIWHUID Guadu YesFGF /IRUUPSRIBHIB Suddenly a few sparks flew off the watch and the boy quickly moved it away from the others so they wouldn't get zapped. What the? Oh shit, did we fry the thing? All Might questioned, getting lightly smacked by the nurse for swearing. Wait, it's glowing again. Function rebooting. Settings restored. Slow playlist unlocking activated. Translator activated. New feature detected. The watch started rattling off different features, only serving to confuse everyone witnessing it. Then, new feature's name, One for All. It recognizes it? Tsukachi questioned, shocked. Function increases users' physical abilities via stored energy. Integrating function into codon stream. Wait, what does that mean? Midoriya questioned, worried, really hoping he hadn't somehow just erased One for All's passing on ability or something. The watch actually seemed to understand his question, as it started to explain. One for All improves the user, partially through DNA. Using the Omnimatrix, this can be preserved through all transformations. Current amount deemed too dangerous to use in human body. Relative split between power output in normal form and alien form is 3% in human form, 98% in alternative forms. So, I can't use a lot of One for All in human form then? He questioned as he took a seat on the opposite bed, wishing this wasn't hurting his head as much as it did. Affirmative. For your safety, the Omnimatrix has locked away a majority of that potential away. Use newly generated code Azuma 22100 to re-evaluate your capability at any time. If it is deemed safe, more power will be transferred to regular form. Well, that must be the oddest thing the watch has done so far. All Might commented as he scratched the back of his head. Yeah, I wonder if Error. Splixin DNA is being heavily altered by One for All. Should we attempt to intervene? The results are unknown. The Omnitrix announced, and really Midoriya was starting to get sick of all the stuff it suddenly was coming away with. I miss when I just pressed a button to turn into something else. Is it dangerous? Unknown. It is not able to be a threat to user's life but may still not be stable. Leave it for now. I'll decide what to do later. Affirmative. My boy? Toshinori cocked his head to the side. You're leaving it? Why? Curiosity, to be honest. The Greenette said, scratching his head and standing up again. It only said Splixin, not all DNA. I want to know why. Though, all things considered, I might have a theory. Oh, and what is that? Better to wait until we can actually test it. So? He couldn't help the small grin that grew across his face as he looked up at his mentor. I have one for all. Yeah, kid. Yeah, you do. All Might said with his own grin. 2 days had passed since then, with dread slowly creeping up more and more on the boy until finally he was swarming with it in this moment. He'd not gone immediately to class, instead going to the principal's office to talk about what they were going to reveal today. As well as how to cover up One for All. A part of him hated he'd still have to lie, but he understood the importance of it. He knew he couldn't just ignore it either. After what would normally be the end of homeroom, the two had walked to the 1A classroom. It was the first day back since the USJ and everyone has seemed a little tense. Understandable, all things considered. Now, all that stood before the boy and his class was the door. A gently shove in the leg by Nizu though grounded him a little, and he took a deep breath before opening the door. They're your friends, they'll understand. If you can escape an alien abduction, you can do this. He walked in and the entire room descended into silence as he did. Aizawa just nodded at them when they walked in. Hope our timing didn't interrupt anything, Aizawa. The principal said in his usual chipper voice, waving to the students as he walked in. I was just starting to tell the students about the sports festival, but it can wait. The gruff man said, taking a seat at his desk and looking up at his one missing student. So, Midoriya? Are you okay, dude? Kirishima spoke up with a hint of worry. We heard something happened to you at the USJ, but no one really knows what. You didn't get hurt too badly or something, did you? Not exactly. The Greenette waved away the concern, trying not to meet Kaminari's eye. Okay, maybe it would be best to start from the top. Before anything else. I just want to say I'm sorry for lying to all of you. Wait, what? What do you mean? Ida asked, concerned. What lie? And why would you lie to us? The Omnitrix bearer let out a sigh and went to explain, but before he could. I'm afraid that last part is my fault, young Ida. A familiar booming voice said, and the Greenette looked up in surprise to see his mentor's muscle form walking in, wrapped in a few bandages. All Might? What are you doing here, shouldn't you be resting? Uraraka called out with a hint of worry. Ha, not to fear, young Uraraka, I got the all clear from Recovery Girl. After all, I could hardly just let Midoriya fall into the deep end for something that wasn't his fault. Not to mention, seeing as I was there when this all happened, it might help for me to also shed some light on a few things. Wait, you knew each other before you got A? Hagakure practically jumped out her chair as she shouted that question, before sitting back down when Aizawa glared at her. Yes, we did. I'd ask you keep any wild speculative rumors to yourself as well, Miss Ishido. The blonde said with a serious gaze directed at the pink girl. Hey, why are you picking on me? She asked with a pout. Midoriya just shook his head. What's truly important is simply that I was already aware of young Midoriya when these events occurred, as I happened to be patrolling his home city a lot at the time. The blonde said with a shrug. Now, all I know from my point of view, which I'll give you first, is I knew young Midoriya was in the forest of said city. I then lost track of him, nothing particularly concerning, until a meteor crashed into the ground and exploded. I rushed in to check on him to only find a massive dinosaur-like creature in blood on the ground. Knowing Midoriya was quirkless, I could only assume this was a villain who had attacked him. Wait, but if that dinosaur was... Kirishima seemed to put the pieces together quickly, before he began to sweat. Oh man. Yes, it's time I let young Midoriya tell you the whole story. With that, the greenette stepped forward and launched into the tale. He omitted the part where he had been camping with All Might and just got onto his walk through the forest. He explained the many falls and scrapes and how the comet had nearly taken off his head, which had gotten a few shudders from the others in the room. So, at this point I'm obviously a little freaked out, because this thing has just fallen out the sky and nearly killed me. Normally I probably would have just left that spot and tried to go home, but then I saw the comet was made of metal. He explained as he lifted his watch up for all to see. I guess it was just instinct to reach towards it. It was too perfect for it to be a natural formation. Then, it opened up and this thing decided to jump out at me. So, you have no idea where the Omnitrix actually came from? Yaoyorozu asked with a frown, and he nodded. Yet you kept a mysterious and potentially dangerous device anyways? I didn't really have much choice. I tried everything I could think of to get it off, but it wouldn't budge. Eventually I accidentally brought up the selection wheel and I just thought pressing it back down would close it. Instead I turned into my first ever alien. Colossus, a 12-foot-tall bipedal dinosaur. All Might finished for him, and looks of understanding dawned upon the class. Wait. But wasn't All Might about to attack you? How did you talk him down? Suyu questioned next, placing a finger to her chin. Midoriya scratched the back of his head at that. I didn't. Yes, I'm afraid I jumped to conclusions a little too quick and found myself deaf in my own anger. Something you should always try to avoid doing. The blonde said with a tone of shame. Fortunately, as luck would have it, that alien would turn out to be one of his strongest. Even with zero training, young Midoriya put up a decent fight against me long enough to explain the situation in time out. Oh wow. That's really a terrifying first test for the very first time using your powers. Ojiro said, sweating slightly just imagining it. Though, that still doesn't explain why you had to lie about it. Like I said before, that was my fault. You see, as we were unable to remove the watch, we discussed the options available for it. We had no idea of its origins, however, the following day. A villain attacked me trying to get it. One of those USJ robots. The boy explained. In a way I got incredibly lucky though. There wasn't any pros around to save us, and, I don't know. I just saw this robot gunning for these two kids and I just reacted. What alien were you then? Aizawa asked, though he had his suspicion. Blink. I never meant to get in an actual fight, but seeing as he was coming for me, he was willing to kill other people and there were no pros to distract it, I couldn't really just run away. My mom ended up getting those kids away and I did the first thing I could think of. I used the wind kicked up by Blink's sheer speed to send the robot into orbit and smash it on the way down. You really have some insane adventures cause of that thing, dude. Zero deadpanned. Yeah, anyways, at this point we knew someone was after the watch, which is also how we found its name, and we knew they were willing to kill people to get it. We could only assume it was the person who made the watch in the first place, which meant we definitely were not just going to give it back. Ah, yeah, then the solution is simple. Ida said, nodding his head as he started to understand. You couldn't take it off anyways and it allowed you to deal with the fact you lack a quirk, so I can only imagine you wouldn't have particularly wanted to part with it anyways. Yep. Everything just made it seem like the best option was to just keep the Omnitrix. All Might started to train me to use my alien somewhat in case I was ever attacked again. Ah, so that's why you seemed a little closer than the average student and teacher. Sada said, snapping his fingers as if he just solved the world's hardest puzzle. So then, the reason to lie about it. Other than it not being technology, as we have recently confirmed, we couldn't be sure who made it. Not that I suspect any student here of anything so dastardly, but we decided to keep its alien origins a secret to avoid yet more attacks on young Midoriya. If a villain saw it but knew it was Earth tech, they'd likely just try to get another person to make it, instead of trying to kidnap the only known version. So wait, not human technology. Yeah. All Might called the aliens first as just a theory. It was just we knew it fell out the sky, turned me into species we'd never seen before, and it even kind of looks alien. It was just a theory at the time, but at the USJ. Well, you all saw Vilgax, right? That creepy squid dude? Yeah, he was just. Ugh, do not like him at all. Mina said, shuddering lightly. Well, you all saw me get dropped through that portal. Vilgax was on the other end. I think I put up a good fight for a while, but he managed to start tampering with the Omnitrix somehow, so I timed out earlier than normal. When All Might arrived, Vilgax got his hands on me. Wait, he did. Dude, what happened? Kirishima really was starting to freak out a little, and Midoriya felt guilty, knowing the redhead was probably even more worried than he let on. Well, no point sugar-coating it. I was kidnapped and tortured. What? The entire room suddenly shouted out the question, and despite the worry it caused them, Midoriya couldn't help but feel a little happy they actually cared. A red-eyed glare from Aizawa quickly got them to quieten down again. I get it might be hard to believe, but I'm not kidding when I say he took me to a ship. He hooked me up to this thing and started blasting electric currents through me, when he knew it wouldn't do anything to get the watch off. That bastard. Surprisingly, Yaoyorozu of all people was the one who exclaimed that before her face flushed crimson and she looked up away embarrassed. All Might just nodded with a growl of his own. Yes he is. But eventually, he did take off the watch. And so, Midoriya explained his entire adventure on the ship, not leaving out any detail regardless of what they were. They'd been horrified at his near-outer space death, intrigued by his meeting with Roller and JJ, horrified yet invested in his recounting of his quirkless battle with Vilgax, and finally understanding when he started to struggle, explaining the fight and Roller's ultimate demise. Well, that explains a lot about things up until this point, Aizawa said, as began to stand up. Nizu, I was just explaining the importance of the festival when you came in. Do you think you could continue for me? I'd like to talk to Midoriya outside. Of course. Now then, students, what have you been told so far? Before Midoriya could hear their reply, her and Aizawa had left and closed the door, blocking out the noise. He looked up to his scruffy, tired homeroom teacher, not quite sure what to expect when the man placed a hand on his shoulders. I already praised you once for this, but seeing from what I heard in there, you should know you did good, kid. I don't completely agree with every action you took at the USJ today, but on that ship, you performed better than anyone could ask of you. He sighed before standing back up. I said once that you'd be useless without your once. Clearly I was wrong. You're capable of more than I gave you credit for. Thank you, sir. Now, while we're here, I might as well start explaining the sports festival to you, seeing as you missed the start. The man said with a shrug, turning to face him. Midoriya smiled a little despite himself. He never thought getting Aizawa's seal of approval on how he performed quirkless would be as gratifying as it was, but he was more than happy to hear that praise. After Midoriya had finally told the class the truth of the Omnitrix, and talked with Aizawa outside, he'd returned to class to find out about the sports festival before going on with the day. He already knew what it was, of course. It would be more worrying if he didn't. It was one of the biggest sporting events in Japan. Every year UA would hold a festival where the students of each year group would compete with one another, fighting to come out on top. They did it to show off their potential to hero agencies, hoping to get internships. At least, that's why they did it in later years. It was a rare occurrence for first years to get any. Still, a chance to prove themselves wasn't something to turn down. After that had been explained, they had gone about their day as usual, and the boy's usual friend group had been especially clingy that day, not that he could blame them. Eventually, it was time to return home, and they had all been walking out towards the front of the school. However, instead of them leaving to Yayaruzu's limousine like usual, the raven-haired girl turned to the boy with a soft smile. "Oh, I entirely forgot to mention. We were talking with Mr. Aizawa this morning and got permission to spend some time with you here. We would have asked first, but we weren't sure you'd be back so soon," she explained with a light blush, rubbing the back of her neck. "So, I kinda called off my limo for a while." He could only blink dumbly for a moment before grinning. "Well, then I guess I might as well show you around. And, thanks guys." "Hey, what are friends for?" Kirishima said, throwing an arm around his neck. "Now let's go." "So, it's only working for a couple of minutes at a time then?" JJ pondered as she inspected the odd machine before her, as Inko nodded with an amused smile. The alien girl was almost like a child in some ways, not understanding parts of the world around her. "Yes, that is the point of a microwave. We don't use them longer than we need or we lose power," the green-haired woman said with a nod, while pulling out some carrots from the fridge. JJ turned out to be a vegetarian, so they had been mainly feeding her salads in the meantime, not that she really minded. After all, a few years of barely edible space gunk made any real food pretty appetizing. "Did you want to try mashed potatoes today, by the way?" "Oh, that sounds really nice, Miss Inko." The girl nodded her head, still fiddling with the machine in front of her, unaware the woman had unplugged it to be safe when a small bang attracted their attention. "I'm home," came Izuku's voice, however more than just his footsteps echoes through the halls. "I brought some of my friends." "Huh? Oh, what good timing," Inko said with a lighty chuckle, opening up the fridge. "I can make something for them as well. We're in the kitchen, sweetie." Once she called through, the boy had quickly shown up, and behind him there had been a small group of humans following him. The Splixen's grin turned nervous as she turned around, especially when all their faces seemed to turn to ones of shook when they laid eyes upon her. Hi? What?" The tallest of the group, a boy with blue hair and glasses, stared perplexed, readjusting his glasses to make sure he was really seeing what was in front of him. Noticing their odd stares, Midoriya chuckled for a moment before hurrying up to her, giving her a small pat on the shoulder to reassure her. "Right, I forgot to mention. Guys, I want you to meet JJ. JJ, these are my friends from school. Uraraka, Yayaruzu, Kirishima, and Ida," he said simply, helping her off the counter without hurting herself. "Guys, you already know who she is." Yayaruzu walked up first, kneeling down with a soft smile and offering her hand. "A pleasure to meet you. Truly, thank you for everything you did for Midoriya." "Ah, it was nothing," she said with a nervous laugh, scratching the back of her head. "Besides, he did the real impressive stuff." "Still, you got Deku back to us," Uraraka said, shaking her fists with a grin. "So you're definitely awesome to me." At that, the Splixen grinned for a moment, before it fell as the other events of that day returned to her. Aside from Midoriya, Kirishima surprisingly was the first person to pick up on it and quickly looked for a change of subject. "Yo, Miss Midoriya. Good to see you again, ma'am," he said, pulling the attention towards the woman while the younger Midoriya pulled his alien friend into a sideways hug. "What you cooking?" "Oh, Kirishima. I'm so glad you asked. It's a special meal designed for JJ. We've been toying with some food and found Masha's carrots mixed with red grapes is actually pretty similar to an old food from her past she loved." The woman explained with a smile, fishing out more stuff from the fridge. "Will you all be staying long? Your timing is impeccable if so. I'd love to cook something for you all." "Ah, you needn't do that, Miss Midoriya," Ida quickly said, bowing. "I do appreciate the effort, but you shouldn't have to do anything on our account." "Nonsense, I'd love to. she said quickly, and Midoriya grinned as he looked up at his friends. Don't bother arguing. She won't take no for an answer. She's about this close to breaking Miss Midnight already. The greenette laughed, deliberately pressing his fingers together. His prediction of the entire school staff sat around his kitchen table might come a little sooner than he expected at the pace she moved. I bet Aizawa will be next. Suddenly, the mental image of Inko kidnapping the one scruffy and strict teacher Midoriya had told the Splixen about came to mind, and she snorted. Well, I guess if we can't say no, you got any ramen? Uraraka wondered with a smile that the plump woman returned, fishing out the noodles. Ida just grumbled under his breath. After a moment, the others also put in requests for some food that would take a while, leaving them to ponder what to do. They were only silent for a moment, though, as a glint appeared in Midoriya's eyes. Well, I'm allowed to use my powers here, and JJ needs to get used to the area anyway, so. He leaned over to Yaoyorozu and began to whisper in the raven-haired girl's ear. JJ noticed she blushed at the proximity, making her grin a little. The creation girl's eyes lit up at whatever his idea was, however, and she stood up with a smile of her own, while Midoriya looked to the rest. Come on guys, we should probably get a teacher to supervise. Huh? What are we doing? Kirishima asked as the group, sans Inko, all walked out into the hall and across to the opposite apartment, knocking on the door. You'll see, was all the Omnitrix bearer said, before the door opened up, revealing Midnight in her hero outfit. Hey, Miss Midnight. Oh, hey kiddo, she said with a grin, getting the rest of the students to look at them with odd expressions. What's up? Why are your friends here? Just visiting, what with everything that's happened. The reason came over though is we need to show JJ around anyways, and thought it would be fun to do it through a game. We need someone as a referee for it though. I heard you complaining on the way in about being bored, so. Ha, you're sweet kid. The teacher laughed, walking out and grinning at them. Actually, I'm going to be the main referee at the sports festival anyways, so I'm down for it as a bit of practice. As long as I can supervise, I assume you'll be using quirks. Yes ma'am, we need to start the game in the first place, Yaoyorozu said with a nod. The teacher gave a thumbs up and the girl smiled, as she turned and unbuttoned part of her blazer to create some things. She turned back with a grin, holding a blue ball in her hand which she chucked over to Midoriya. The game. It's a bit more frantic a version of hot potato, he explained, while scrolling through his transformations. The ball Yamamo just created is on a timer. When it's turned on and runs out, it will open up and spray whoever's holding it with a little water. Not much, just enough to know who lost. Then, he pressed in the selection dial, disappearing into a flash of green light and shrinking down until he was shorter than even JJ. He looked up at them all, with dead eyes and a wide-open green mouth. Finally, for the first time, his friends got to meet Reverb. His body glowed for a moment as a clone split out either side of him before two more came from them. And to Kui Piat Far, TAMS of 7? Boys vs. Girls. JJ, you in? The Splixen blinked for a moment before punching her open palm and cracking her knuckles, with a determined grin and splitting into multiple of herself. Challenging me with a Sonicarian? How could I ever back down? Boys versus girls it is. With that they all began to walk out into the city, but not before Kirishima spoke up with a teasing grin. So, Yamamo, Midoriya? At that, the white silicone-housed alien froze up, and Uraraka also giggled a little at the realization. Said girl blushed and rubbed her head but gave him a reassuring grin. It's okay, I like it. It's cute. It's also understandable if my full name was getting a little much to say. He. Deku and Yamamo. The red-headed boy grinned, before getting elbowed in the stomach by Uraraka. Hey! I'm just saying. The game was even more hectic than JJ had expected. Yaoyorozu had set the timer for 6 minutes, giving them plenty of time to scatter. They had confined themselves to 2 streets, however allowed themselves to enter the building. 2 more of Midoriya's reverb clones had also been created, but giving markings to distinguish them. They weren't playing, just following the ball when it went inside to feed information to Midnight when she couldn't see. The first round had started with the ball in Kirishima's hands, who had quickly thrown it off to one of the JJs. The alien girl had called on another clone, throwing it to them as they leapt through the air to quickly launch it at a reverb clone. Instead of just catching it, however, he had used his sonic screams to launch it back into Uraraka's hands before the boys all scattered. Unfortunately, despite being the fastest player, Ida had failed to get out of sight. Uraraka had floated the ball, and Yaoyorozu had quickly came along with a baseball bat she'd created to launch it to the other class president. He'd turned to throw it back only to see the girls had already started dispersing. Taking a risk, he threw it at the one JJ still in sight and managed to get it right into her hands. After that, the clone hadn't found anyone until right at the end of the round, where Kirishima had gotten cocky atop one of the smaller building's rooftops. Midnight had called out for him to be careful when the ball suddenly landed in his hands and sprayed him, throwing him over the edge. Fortunately, the reverb keeping track of the ball was quick to react, leaping of the building and multiplying rapidly to create what amounted to a hovering raft of bodies staying aloft via pure sound. After a quick reminder to not get so close to the edges, they had begun again, this time with Uraraka holding the ball. There had been more back-in froth in the streets that time before they had ran off, but eventually it came down to Ida and Uraraka in one of the building's basements when the girl had taken too long to throw the ball and gotten sprayed. The final round had come down to the original reverb and original JJ on either side of the street, atop the buildings. With a tie, the alien boy holding the ball knew he couldn't afford to keep holding it any longer, so he used his abilities to his advantage, running and using his sonic scream to launch himself across the buildings and throw the ball into JJ's hand, where it finally sprayed her. They'd all returned to Midnight after that, laughing regardless of how they performed and turning back into the original group, JJ's clones returning to her and Midoriya making sure to take all his back before changing back into human form. Well, as you all probably realize, the boys won thanks to Midoriya's quick decision-making skills. The woman said with a grin and a twirl, writing on a notepad none of them had seen her take out. Also, not related to the game, but I think I'll have to look into getting a similar game added in as a standard hero exercise in future. It's quite good training for your reflexes and testing your quick thinking skills. With that, they had all began to make their way back when Kirishima, who was now holding onto the ball, had tripped on an uneven part of the pavement and fallen forward. Ida had caught him quickly, however the ball had catapulted into the air. Before anyone else could react, 2 different voices called out. "I got it! I got it!" Crash! Both Midoriya and Yaoyorozu had jumped for it at the same time and smashed into one another, the taller girl's weight throwing them forward onto the ground. Everything went silent for a moment, no one giving any more attention to the ball as it shattered on the road, all eyes on the 2 students. Midnight let out a childish squeal while Kirishima rolled his eyes. "Seriously, could you 2 be any more cliché right now?" he asked with an amused grin, while Ida ran forward to help them both up and assess how they were. However, the 2 didn't really register any of his words, because Yaoyorozu had ended up laying on top of Izuku in the most embarrassing way possible. In the background, JJ began to laugh her ass off. After they recovered, both were helped to their feet, brushing themselves off and apologizing profusely to one another. They both stayed red-faced and quiet all the way back until finally they had started to eat and calm down. JJ was still thoroughly amused. "Thank you all for coming," Inko called from the kitchen as Midoriya's friends finally began to file out. Ida and Kirishima had dispersed first, then Uraraka, and finally after a sweet short hug even Yaoyorozu had began to depart. However, before she could leave completely, JJ had quickly ran out after her, catching up quickly. Hearing her footsteps, the tall girl turned to face the alien with a look of surprise. "Oh, JJ? Is something the matter?" "No, I just wanted to ask something," she explained as she slowed down, walking up to the girl and taking her breath. She hoped she could do this properly, her race weren't known for being intimidating. "Do you like Midoriya?" "Huh? Of course I do, he's one of my best friends." the girl said, as if it should be obvious and tilting her head to the side. The Splixen shook her head as she looked up, putting on a mean face. No, I mean, do you like him that way? More than a friend? Her tone sounded almost accusing as she said it, and the tall girl began to blush as she stared at her. What on earth makes you ask that? She questioned, and the alien just quirked a brow, making her look away. I don't know? I mean, do you? Is that why you're asking? No, he's cool but... JJ's mean look turned into more of a pout as she crossed her arms. He did a lot for me, so I'm not going to let anyone hurt him. There was a beat of silence, then Yaoyorozu put her hand to her mouth as she began to giggle, causing the smaller of the two to look at her confused. The rich girl shook her head, taking the hand off her mouth and placing it on JJ's shoulders. I promise I won't do anything to hurt him. I promise, Anne. Thank you for caring about him. Well, as long as we are in the same page, the Splixen said triumphantly, turning and walking back to her new apartment. Yaoyorozu struggled to stop giggling all the way home. Later that night, Midoriya had found himself near the forest area of UA with All Might and Nizu. He'd only gotten a text telling him to come meet them and no other information, but he had an idea what to expect. Ah, there you are, my boy. The blonde waved when he noticed the greenette approaching, and Nizu turned with a grin of his own. Sorry to spring this on you, but we need to do a little extra training. For one for all, right? The Omnitrix wielder questioned and was met with a nod. Yes. We got to figure out how it works now, especially with the Omnitrix deciding to regulate your power output itself. So, what do you want to deal with first? Human form one for all, or alien one for all? The latter is probably more dangerous, but also what we really need to know about. I think we should start with my aliens. Midoriya decided, pulling up his watch and scrolling through his transformations. More of one for all goes to them, so I need to think. Probably the best bets for who can handle the full power would be Colossus or Crystallize, or I suppose Goliath, but that's overkill. Oh, I guess Goop also has an advantage on that front. Then, he scrolled past one transformation and he stopped. Actually, if we're going to start with any of them, we should figure out what the Omnitrix was talking about. Let's start with Duple. He pressed in the dial and a bright flash engulfed him as he began to shrink and his body became more rubber-y, arms growing long and large. He looked at himself when it was over and noticed no real change from before. Huh, that's odd. Midoriya? Nizu asked, and the alien looked up with a grin at his mentor and principal. Yeah, what's up, Doc? He asked as he tried the first thing he knew he should before they began. His body glowed green and another alien exactly the same popped out. This one's called Duple. Nice to meet ya. The clone was only around long enough to give a fanciful bow before merging back with the original so he could begin this. So, how do I do this? Well, the first step is to clench your butt, of course. All Might said with a laugh as if it was the most obvious thing, ignoring the alien's bewildered look. After that, just focusing on calling the power to yourself and it should come. Focus on calling the power. The alien took a breath and imagined a raw energy flowing within him. To his surprise, red lines started to cover his rubbery alien body and he looked over himself. Whoa, this actually really stings, but it doesn't feel like. I think that's either the Omnitrix or your alien somehow keeping you from breaking. You're using far too much energy right now, can you even move? All Might asked concerned, and very barely the alien shook his head. Not really. Wait, I just need to tone down the power, right? He asked, and the skinny man nodded, wondering where he was going with this. Well, if the power is separated across different bodies, it can't do as much to me, can it? Wait, my boy, I'm not sure if... It was too late for whatever the blonde was going to say as a green glow began to overpower the glow of one for all, and then suddenly... Boom! Both the teachers had to look away as a bright white light erupted before turning back and having their jaws drop in shock. The tree behind Midoriya had disintegrated in pieces from him, colliding with it in the backlash. Directly opposite him, slowly beginning to stand up, was another Splixon. Unlike last time though, this one didn't look the same as the original. It bared more of a resemblance to JJ in terms of body shape, with 3 tufts of hair instead of horns. Its body was black and yellow instead of pure green, and it began to talk in a much more feminine voice. One that caused the blonde to freeze up completely. What happened? She asked, clutching her head as she looked up. What happened to me? Why are my hands like this? Midoriya finally recovered, clutching his arm in pain as he walked to his mentor's side, completely befuddled. The female Splixon looked up at them all and her eyes widened. Toshinori? She knew All Might? Master? Wait, what? Wait, what? The original Duple's eyes bulged as he looked over to the mysterious Splixon, jaw-dropping. Wait. Don't tell me. Master, Nana, is that you? The blonde questioned, apparently completely deaf to his successor as he walked forward on shaky legs. Toshinori. Toshinori, what's going on? She asked as she looked at her arms and down at her feet. Why am I here? What am I? Wait. Suddenly the confused woman bolted forward, leaping at the skinny man and grabbing him by the shirt, eyes full of fear. Toshinori, what happened with All for One? Nana, hey, come on. The man said, doing his best calming voice he could while placing his hands on her shoulders. Deep breaths, in and out. Like you taught me. Alright, in and out. The Splixon nodded, doing just that as she tried to calm herself down. In and out. In and out. Anyone want to explain what in the heck is happening here? Midoriya asked, reminding them he was still here and drawing their attention. Nizu? I'm afraid I have no idea, Midoriya. The bear-mouse hybrid shrugged, looking between the mystery woman and All Might. Okay. One question at a time. All Might announced with a groan, standing up. And before anything else, introductions. Nana, I know you never met, but I told you about Nizu, right? The new principal at U.A? Right? She asked, cocking her head to the side as she looked down at him, and the principal frowned. I am the principal, yes, but I'm hardly new, no, not even slightly new. Yeah. He's been at it for 7 years now. The blonde said, scratching the back of his neck and causing the woman to whirl around, to face him. 7 years? She repeated incredulously as her eyes widened. How? I was fighting All for One just a moment ago. This can't be. Nana. You died. The man said, looking away, and Midoriya felt his stomach sink. Crap, now I'm a necromancer? And a cloner? Fuck it, universe, why don't you just turn me into a sandwich next? Makes about as much sense as everything else so far. Honestly, for the briefest moments he worried the Omnitrix would somehow turn him into a sandwich. I died? Nana questioned, before taking a deep breath. Okay, don't freak out. Don't freak out, don't FRE, how the hell is this happening? Nana, calm down. I promise if you stop freaking out we can explain, at least with a theory. We don't have much time to though, so please, let us talk. All Might explained to her and she nodded, clearly still freaked out. Yes, it's been 7 years. You lost that fight, but I won it a while after. Why you did? The woman asked in shock, before she smiled for the first time throughout this whole debacle as she wrapped her rubbery limbs around the man. That's my boy. I know I was right to choose you as my successor. Speaking of successors, Midoriya? The man called over and the green alien teen walked forward, rubbing his arm and waving nervously. Nana, like you just heard, is my mentor, and Midoriya here, he's my successor. He? Oh. Oh wow. The woman said, in an almost stunned silence. There was silence for a moment as she walked up to him. Hi Midoriya, nice to meet you. I'm Nana. I heard. Midoriya said with a smile as he shook her hand, being surprised when the woman suddenly pulled him into a tight hug. Oh okay, we're hugging now. Sorry about her, she always got emotional at the idea of having grandchildren and I guess this is the closest she has. All Might explained, while Midoriya awkwardly wrapped his own arms around her before she finally let go. Now, there are multiple elephants to address in this room dash. Like the fact we're not in a room. Mizu interrupted with a chuckle, getting a groan out of the blonde. Midoriya, my boy, I'm sure you are confused about some of the things my mentor has said, but we can always talk later, so we'll address that then, okay? The man asked, and the green-clad Splixon nodded. Now then. Nana. You should know that Midoriya doesn't have a quirk, nor does he look like this normally. At that, the mystery woman's eyes lit up as she turned to her successor, who along with comments from Midoriya explained his unique situation. She had freaked out a little at the revelation aliens existed and she was currently one of them, but it hadn't been as bad as before. Now she had time to adjust. Now. I have a theory on why you came back. All Might announced, drawing everyone's attention. Midoriya's Omnitrix had a weird way of handling One for All. It seems it's locked most of the potential away to alternative forms to keep him safe, meaning he can only reach a safety limit in human form as I understand it. However, there was an error when One for All met the Splixon DNA, is it? Well, Midoriya, you already had a cloning alien, right? What's different? Yeah, the difference is just that, while typically reverb is better. Don't tell JJ I said that, but Splixon split personality and feel shared pain while reverb is a completely unified person. Olitty, oh. Yes, exactly my boy. I think, due to One for All enhancing one's natural abilities and a part of this alien's abilities splitting personalities, it has tried to bolster that trait and in the process, essentially revived my mentor to do so. Presumably, if you were to it again, I could only presume my master's master would come out and so on and so forth. That's insane. Nana said with a frown, sitting down. I can't believe it, just. Holy crap. I'd also presume your power has split between you, so Nana can hold half of One for All and you can hold the other, my boy. Toshinori explained, rubbing his neck. Midoriya nodded, understanding that. Well. Shaking her head, the woman forced a shaky smile as she turned to them all. Can I at least see what Midoriya actually looks like? Oh. Of course, just give me a moment. All Might said, pulling out his phone and opening his gallery. I still have the before and after pics I took during our training. I thought I asked you to delete those. Midoriya said with a frown, and the skinny man laughed. Guess I'm sentimental. He gave us his excuse, making the transformed teen roll his eyes. Beep. 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 Everyone's eyes widened at that noise as the Omnitrix symbol of Midoriya's chest began to flash. Immediately the boy turned to the woman, who had a befuddled expression on her face as the boy grabbed her, panicked. Ah. Quick, we have to fuse again. Huh? How? Why? Just focus, imagine doing it. The boy said quickly, voice worried, and the woman closed her eyes to do so, glowing yellow before she was pulled back into the boy and a green flash engulfed them. BWOO. Midoriya fell forward with a gasp, slowly pushing himself up and looking to Toshinori, who just stood still, looking at the spot where his mentor had been. He didn't even get to say goodbye. I'm sorry. I didn't want to risk it. The greenette said through gasps, surprisingly tired. He guessed using One for All in alien form would still be taxing, just in a much different way. And no, you made the right call, Midoriya. I don't think it would have ended well. The blonde explained, voice coming in more broken than before as he turned away. All Might? Sorry, it's just. She always taught me to smile, no matter what. For her to be so shaken, she couldn't. I can't even begin to imagine how scared she really was. At that, Midoriya frowned, before walking over and wrapping the man in a hug. The blonde didn't try to fight it. Not to interrupt such a heartfelt moment, but, Mr. Midoriya, did I hear you right? You mentioned nothing of increased strength or durability when you talked about that form. Yeah, why? The boy asked, confused as he let go of his mentor and turned to the principal. Then it hit him. Oh crap. I went full power there. Wait, yeah you did. How weren't you injured? The skinny man wondered himself, suddenly pulling the boy back to examine him. I mean, my arm hurt, but I don't know. Midoriya frowned when a new voice spoke up. It might be because we have a rubber-like body. It's maybe not a lot more durable than a human body, but it's enough to maybe ward off any serious injury you might have gotten. A feminine voice explained, and the remaining group turned to see JJ standing there nervously. Hi, I got worried when I realized you'd sneaked off, so I came to find you. My boy? Toshinori questioned, looking to his successor. What do we do now? Aren't you supposed to be the one who tells me what to do? We tell her the truth. JJ should know, especially if she's going to be living with me and my mom anyways. The teen said as he walked forward. Somehow he felt like the explanations would never end, and through them all he eventually forgot to ask. Who is all for one? The rest of the week had been dedicated to getting Midoriya used to one for all in human form after school. JJ had begun to join their training sessions while Nizu started to show up to them less as they trained. When the alien girl had heard about the power, she had been completely supportive, promising to help in whatever way she could to get Midoriya to improve. It was rare the boy got a break from the training, either as All Might wanted him prepared for the sports festival, which only gave them a week and a half, and seeing as Midoriya only had 3% of the power to work with. His first test, the day after the Nana debacle, had been to punch a tree at full power. It ended up splitting and almost toppling on him. After that they had tested his running speed and jumping height. Overall, 3% was nothing compared to All Might's 100% as expected, but it was still quite the step up from being quirkless, as he barely but definitely reached at the very least what an absolute peak physical human could. His punches could likely at least match up to Kirishima's hardened ones, and he could run maybe about a quarter as fast as Ida could. His agility also seemed to gain something of an increase, as well, allowing him to leap up into the branches of trees with a little effort. Still, overall Midoriya had a feeling he'd be relying on his aliens over the power for a while to come. It was nice to finally have the option to fight back though, which had actually given him an idea. He hadn't told even All Might about it, only talking with Nizu to confirm it would be okay and JJ to get the necessary items for it before sending a request to the support department. He had a feeling it wouldn't be finished until after the sports festival, but that was okay. One thing Midoriya had wanted to try again, but the blonde had vetoed, was using duple again. The man simply needed more time before he could go through that again. Somewhere in the back of the greenette's mind he thought it would only make it harder, but he had respected the man's wishes, and eventually, the day of the festival had arrived. Class 1A had arrived early and gotten changed at the school before being ushered to the waiting rooms inside the stadium as people crowded in to get seats. That's where they all sat waiting now to be called, just trying to psyche themselves up. Midoriya had just been in the middle of talking with Yamamo about how they were feeling about the day to come when Todoroki of all people walked up to the boy. Midoriya. Huh? Oh hey Todoroki, what's up? The boy asked, confused as he turned to him, and his confusion only grew as the heterochromatic teen glared at him. Objectively speaking, you may be the weakest member of our class. Yet also the strongest. What is for sure is that you're versatile, and have something of an advantage over everyone here. You might already be expecting some people to target you, but I want you to know, I will beat you. Confusion turned to anger. Hey now Todoroki. Kirishima came in, trying to keep the situation from escalating, clearly nervous. We're all classmates, no need to go declaring war. No, he's right. Midoriya said simply, standing up. I do have an unfair advantage, even I'll concede that much. Why it means you have to single me out, I don't know, but... The boy looked up with a glare of his own, fire in his eyes. If you single me out without regard, then the only thing I can promise you is I won't play fair. If you try to pick on me alone, I will deliver everything I have to you. Silence overtook the room as an unsuspected air of unease hit the room. As well as a slight fear, as they all know Midoriya wasn't kidding. Just so you know. I'm only warning you to be fair. Then, they got the clear to leave out onto the field, the heterochromatic teen not bothering to look back. Midoriya could tell. Todoroki didn't regret his declaration in the slightest. Heya sports fans! Today we here at UA are bringing you the greatest sports festival performances so far guaranteed. Present Mike announced from the commentator stands, people cheering as he did so. I got just one question for ya. Are you ready, EI? The stands erupted into even louder hollers as they tried to convey their enthusiasm. Midoriya could only gulp, hearing them even from the hall they were in. A hand on his shoulder drew his attention and turned to see Mina giving him a smile. He smiled back, thankful for the quiet support before they walked onto the field. First up, the students I am sure a lot of you have come for, it's 1A from the hero course. The cheers got louder once again and Midoriya realized something. The crowd was much bigger than it looked on TV. He took a deep breath, looking down to the Omnitrix for comfort. If he didn't know better, he would have, though the beeps it gave off at that moment were supposed to make him feel better. Actually scratch that, it was the Omnitrix, he would never know better. Next up, also from the hero course, Class 1B. Present Mike announced as the other hero class walked in from the opposite side of the stadium. And other classes as well, like 1C. Somewhere in the back of the Greenhead's mind, he couldn't help but berate his teacher mentally for giving 1A a bigger introduction than anyone else. Mainly because it put even more pressure on the Greenhead. After a couple of minutes, the stadium was filled up with all the first years, standing in front of a podium in the middle of the stadium where one of their teachers, Midnight, stood. Now it's time for this year's introductory speech. The sultry teacher announced, waving around a short whip. Midoriya deadpanned with a blush as he saw her hero outfit. Is that outfit even allowed to be shown on TV? As the first-place student of the entrance exam, our student pledge shall be delivered by 1A's Katsuki Bakugu. Everyone looked among themselves surprised at that. Bakugu of all people was going to give a speech? Midoriya already had his hands on his watch ready to turn into an alien just to contain the potential outburst that could cause. Everyone held their breath as the blonde stepped onto the podium and up to Midnight's microphone. I just want to say, I'm going to win, was all he said before pausing, eliciting boos from all of the crowd of students and spectators. Everyone thought he was done, before he suddenly leaned in again. And like an actually good hero, I'll crush any villains. With that, he walked off, still being booed. He clearly didn't care. To 99% of the people present, it seemed like Bakugu had just used the moment to show off to any pros watching. However, Midoriya knew it was something different. Because for some reason, he had looked straight at the Greenhead when he said it. Well, that was certainly. It was something. Midnight said, completely dumbstruck by how the boy had gone about it, before shaking her head and smirking. Oh well, no one is really here for the pledge anyway. You all want to see the events, the first of which shall be. She paused as a graphic popped up, scrolling through dozens of potential events before finally stopping on one. An obstacle course. Once again, the crowd cheered as the students all turned to a door at one side of the stadium, brought to their attention by flashing lights at the top. Get ready, students. You'll do one full lap around to the other side of the stadium from the track set up outside. Do you have the nerves to make it past the first event? Let us find out. The rules are simple. In this event you can do as your heart desires, so long as you stay at least near the boundaries of the racecourse. 3. Izuku breathed in, pulling up the Omnitrix, turning to blink as he always did. Then a thought occurred to him. He looked at how small the room they actually had to get past was. 2. He looked up, and at the very front of the pack there stood Todoroki. He definitely was looking back at him before the greenette looked up. I want you to know, I will beat you. He recalled hero training and how fast Todoroki's ice could spread. 1. He changed selections, and didn't press in. Nice try, Todoroki. Go! With that, the door swung open and all the students ran forth, blasting through the halls. All but one. Midoriya hanged back, waiting for it. What's this? Midoriya from 1A has yet to start moving? Has he frozen up? You want to talk about freezing up? Midoriya asked, grinning when he saw the telltale frost coat the entire hallway, freezing a majority of the students within. Ask them. Or better yet. He pressed in the watch in the stadium, all say a green flash engulf him, before looking back to see a man-sized bipedal moth wrapped in a cloak beginning to move forward. Ask Chiller. Let's see how much of an obstacle course this really is. With that, the alien teen took into the air, flying right towards the wall. He turned transparent just before the collision, disappearing from everyone's view until a few moments later, where he suddenly came back to view on the other side. What they hadn't seen was him going straight through the arena. He chuckles to himself in his breathy voice, noticing most of the front pack now was his classmates and 1B students, Todoroki and Bakugo leading the charge. If Todoroki wants to declare war, then I guess I'll fight fire with fire. Weird analogy actually, considering we can both also control fire and not the time. He shouted that last part as he dodged barely out the way of a zero-pointer robot trying to slam him down. He had already made it to 5th place by simply skipping overhead so far, but now he was having to actually fight. Well, he was for all of 3 seconds. He retreated a few steps and couldn't help smiling to himself when he saw Yaoyorozu making her own path. Cool moves, but I think everyone can agree, mine are much cooler. As he said that, the zero-pointer before him tried to smack him out the air. He turned incorporeal just before it hit and left a nice little trail of ice going through its arm before he popped out the other side. Now overbalanced, the monstrosity of a machine fell on its side and Midoriya weaved around the other robots as he made his way. From his higher vantage point, he could also see both the upcoming obstacles, which would be ridiculously easy for him. A giant pit and a minefield. He could just keep going now, and by the time anyone had gotten past the pit, seeing as Todoroki was only halfway, Midoriya would probably win and be able to get a drink before the next event. Would you look at that, sports fans? It seems Midoriya was way ahead of us when we were designing this course. Actually. Speaking of this particular participant, he's U.A's one and only quirkless student. Laughing as he soared, Chiller felt like this would be too easy. Not to mention hearing the shocked shouts of the crowd from here was amusing. I am not pulling your leg, sports fans. My co-commentator, the boy's own teacher, can attest to that much. Present Mike and Midoriya was surprised to hear his teacher's bored voice beside the man. Yeah. Due to his unique position, I decided to draft up some sheets to keep everyone able to actually tell who he is, seeing as the events are also meant as scouting opportunities. In short, using a device known as the Omnimatrix or Omnitrix, he can turn into one of various transformations, dubbed aliens. If you looked away at the wrong time, it would be easy to lose him, due to his ability to completely change forms and powers at any time. If it wasn't for the fact he was literally physically incapable of it in his current form, Midoriya would totally be blushing right now. He felt kinda guilty for the other competitors. The one currently in use. Dubbed Chiller, because he has to have childish names for them apparently -HUI. My names are good. Mostly. Okay, maybe Pyroform could use some work. This form has moth-like physique, allowing him flight. Along with this, as we saw already, he also has ice manipulation powers and the ability to phase through solid matter. Huh. 2 ice users in your class? Guess they weren't kidding when they said you were cold-hearted, Aizawa. Excuse me? Alright, that's enough getting distracted. Todoroki's at the minefield now, so gotta dash. Wait, no AHH. His heart suddenly jumped to his throat. He recognized that voice. Turning, he saw Yamamo hurtling through the air, a zero-pointer another student was fighting, smacking her forward in the race. Normally probably a painful but effective way to gain ground. Except she was hurtling straight towards the second obstacle, the pit wall, to stun to save herself. Oh crap, don't worry sports fans, we have a special system rigged up at the bottom of the pit for their safety, nothing to worry about. Yeah, nothing to worry about normally, but clearly the pro didn't see what Midoriya did. For whatever reason, the girl had created a sword to use, and it was currently falling right towards her. All thoughts of winning the race gone in an instant, he dived for the girl. However, it quickly became apparent he didn't have the speed to catch up, and he couldn't come up with any reliable plan with his ice powers in time. No. I refuse. Without another thought, he went through with the sixth stupidest plan of his life. He changed back to his human form. As he began plummeting, he did try to call on One for All, but it did nothing to help. Crap. That sword is getting too close. Oh sports fans, looks like it's come down to Todoroki or Bakugo any minute now. Midoriya is nowhere to be seen. Beep. Midoriya looked down and saw the Omnitrix had already flashed back green. Life in danger, check. Okay, Omnitrix. I need you to work with me here, don't have the time for careful selection. Please, please, please. He slammed in the dial, and after a flash, cannon shot appeared from the light, rolling in ball, sixth sense guiding him. Yes. Thank you, Omnitrix. And thank you, Roller. Soon, he was close enough and unfurled, the sword was right on the verge of colliding with the girl. Quickly he smacked it away and reached out. Grab on Yamamo. Midoriya? She asked, surprised, before quickly reaching out. It was kind of like tight hug in a way as he curled up around her and deliberately started smashing into the pillars around him. He was probably making life very difficult for the people climbing on top, but he didn't have time to think about that as he finally built up enough momentum and launched them both out of the pit to the other side, landing directly in the middle of the minefields. Oh my! Look at that sports fans, it's Midoriya again, blazing a path in a brand new form. And if the screens showing replays aren't deceiving me, he's also carrying Momo Yaoyorozu with him. What unexpected teamwork! Explosion after explosion went off as cannon shot rolled over the field, not being affected by a single one. As his sixth sense perceived Bakugo and Todoroki in front of him. Don't stop me now, guys. I'm on a roll, That pun was as shit as you deku. Bakugo called back as both he and Todoroki had no choice but to jump out the way. However, this also meant that they jumped right onto landmines. Both seemed to realize their mistake about the same time. You fucker, Deku. I can't believe it. After disappearing suddenly, Midoriya has come back and now he's cleared the field. There's likely no stopping that alien. Cannon shot, I believe he named him. One of the three I've got the fewest notes on. He only got this one recently, due to an adventure, shall we say. There's not much to this one, however I can't deny he's effective. His outer body is coated with a near indestructible shell, and he can curl up into a ball to roll around without getting motion sick, making him the ultimate cannonball. With that, the alien flew out into the stadium, unfurling as the stadium roared with cheers. Midoriya tapped the symbol on his chest quickly and turned back to normal as he looked to Yaoyorozu in front of him, who looked at him dazed. Crap, I probably just... I'm sorry, I just didn't want to lose and I had no time to think. I didn't mean to take your opportunity away from you, Before he could continue, he felt two slender arms wrap around him, and he blushed as he realized Momo was hugging him tight. On TV. Where both their parents could definitely see it right now. It's fine, Midoriya. You saved me. I'm not mad. Thank you. The girl said, holding him tight. Nervously, he wrapped his own arms around her. Hey Eraserhead, those two dating or something? They blushed heavily as they let each other go. Students' personal lives are not something to talk about on television, Mike. Aizawa berated, and the two were thankful for their scruffy homeroom teacher. For all of 2 minutes, as they forgot he loves to mess with them all. Give it a few months. Well, either way, Momo Yaoyorozu and Izuku Midoriya have tied in first place. With that, Midoriya relaxed, collapsing into the ground behind him. His blush didn't die away, and for some reason he found himself entertaining the idea the commentators brought up about the two. It was silly. Like that would ever happen, like he would ever be that lucky. Still, it was a nice thought to make him smile. Then he realized what that meant. Ah, shit. Magister? Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Yes. Yes, I am. How did he? I'm not sure, but we have had those odd reports recently. Maybe they weren't as bogus as we thought. What should we do? On a screen, in front of the two men conversing, was Izuku Midoriya, relaxing against a stadium wall with some raven-haired girl they cared nothing about. If he has the Omnitrix, we need to train him. Sports festivals are meant for hero internships. I need you to go put in the paperwork for a special request. Yes, sir. So you want him to become a plumber? Yes, for all our sakes I do. Are you okay, Midoriya? You've been red-faced for a while now. You aren't sick, are you? Momo pondered, placing a hand on her friend's shoulder as the two watched participant after participant run in, having nothing better to do while they waited. The boy smiled nervously, waving away her concern. No, just being betrayed by my brain with how close you are right now. Not great with crowds is all. Ah. Well, if it helps, you've got me here for any support you need. The rich teen said, patting his shoulder. Externally, the boy smiled. Internally he screamed. Thanks, Momo, it helps. It also makes this worse. Shaking his head, he began to stand up as more and more people poured through. So what do you think is up next? Well, there's only one way to find out. Momo said as she followed his lead, and the two began making their way to the center podium where Midnight was setting up again. Whatever it is, let's do our best. Right. It was a cavalry battle. A team event. That wasn't so bad. Momo and Midoriya had shared looks of excitement at that, thankful they wouldn't be fighting everyone all at once for once. Then the scoring system was announced. Based on each student's placements in the obstacle course, the first 40 or so had been assigned headbands with a value starting at 5 and gradually increasing from there. The first place value. 1 million points. Midnight announced excitedly, and all eyes swiveled to the two who had secured that value. The Omnitrix bearer began to sweat while the creation girl gulped. Of course, as Izuku Midoriya and Momo Yaoyorozu tied, they both have this value. Unfortunately, someone forgot to account for the possibility that people might tie, so the headband will be shared between them. Now, you have until we can move this podium off-field to form teams. Begin! With that, students instantly dispersed, most of them immediately moving away from the two first-place students. Groaning, the greenette turned to his taller friend apologetically. Sorry I got you stuck with me, he said, scratching the back of his neck while trying to think how he could use their situation to their advantage. He was briefly pulled out of his thoughts when the raven-haired teen ended, flashing him the brightest smile he'd seen in his life, and he watched All Might toothpaste commercials. It's fine, Midoriya. I likely would have choose to work with you anyways. We can't get caught up in what might be though. What's our plan? She asked, looking around before her eyes widened. Oh, hi Ida. Yaoyorozu, Midoriya. The blue-haired teen said curtly, grabbing the smaller boy's attention. Ida stood tall, glasses hiding his eyes with the light. He looked almost intimidating. Oh, Ida. Are you joining us? Midoriya asked, excited. I might have the perfect plan if dash. No. The class president cut the boy off and Midoriya flinched back, surprised at the abrupt refusal. Readjusting his spectacles, the engine teen met the greenette's eyes. I'm afraid I cannot bring myself to join your team. You see, we are just as much rivals as anyone else, Midoriya, and though you may be my friend, I have to play for myself today. Make no mistake, I am not trying to make you my enemy, Midoriya, however we are rivals, today and throughout the rest of our careers most likely. I just wanted to make sure you understood I had no malicious intent before I joined Todoroki. With that, the boy walked off, leaving the two first-place students absolutely befuddled, nearly missing the redhead and brunette approaching next, the brunette whispering to herself. Man, Ida was really intense there. Hey, you two. Nice going on the obstacle course, Kirishima said, and the Omnitrix bearer turned to see the redhead along with Uraraka, determined gazes upon their faces. Got room for two more? I thought you would have tried to work with Bakugo Kirishima? Yamamo questioned, cocking her head to the side in confusion. Would he have not been a good match with you this event? I mean, quirk-wise yeah, but he kept muttering stuff under his breath about Midobro. I don't think I could have got through the whole event without snapping at him at some point. The hardening teen shrugged, making Midoriya blush lightly at the sentiment behind his actions. Yeah. Yes we do. Midoriya nodded quickly, happy for all the help I could get. Then, as he looked between his group, a plan started to form. Creation, zero gravity, hardening, and the ability to move the first-place headband between two players. He lifted the Omnitrix quick, flying through selections. He could work with this. Yamamo, what's the strongest material you can make? Well, I've been trying to practice making stuff stronger than steel, though at the moment I'm only able to improve upon the steel I already make. I could try to push myself if need be though. Alright. Then, Uraraka, you need to be a back horse dash quickly, he began his instructions, as they all listened intently. Determined smiles shared between the friends. They got this. Soon enough they got into formation, Uraraka taking her spot as the back left horse and Midoriya as the back right horse. Momo sat atop them, and Kirishima took up the front. Ready? Midnight called out to the teams, ready to start the event. Remember Uraraka, Kirishima. You're our close-range defense, mainly you just need to keep an eye out for any enemies. Midoriya reminded, setting his fingers on his watch. Yamamo, you protect that headband on your head at all costs. Don't hesitate, if you see incoming create a shield immediately. Right. The girl nodded, and they gritted their teeth just waiting for the event to begin. What about you? You didn't explain your part in this. Begin. He pressed in the watch immediately, and after a brief flash, Crystal Ice stood tall, grinning wildly. Ice immediately moved across the field, undoubtedly a gift from Todoroki. I'm our long-range support and defense. Before the ice could get close to them, a sudden almost shockwave of crystals erupted out the ground, flying around and shattering the ice. Other teams ran at them and Midoriya took a breath. We just need to stay out the way of incoming grabs so. Suddenly the ground beneath the stadium tore apart beneath them and the team was raised into the air by a podium of crystals. I'll keep making them, we just need to move. Trust me? With my life, man. Kirishima called back, excited, running forward and leaping off onto another platform as the previous one fell away. A loud bang got their attention and they turned to see Bakugo blasting after them. Incoming! Deku! The blonde screamed, flying right towards them. Stay! Midoriya ordered calmly and his team listened. Bakugo shot closer and closer, then Midoriya grinned. Now! As the blonde tried to blast towards them, a sudden wall of crystal shot up and Midoriya pretended not to enjoy how satisfying hearing his once tormentor crash into the wall was. Ha! Nice going, Deku! Uraraka called excitedly. Momo nodded, shield already in hand just in case. What next? We just keep moving. Next time he gets too close, I want you to try to float him, Uraraka. It won't do much, but slowing him down at all will be really useful. Kirishima, ready? Ready. They leapt once more. Damn. Would you look at those moves, sports fans? Are they even legal maneuvers? I'll allow it. Midnight called out, causing Midoriya to grin. They would rely on that plan for a while. Alright then. Yo, Eraserhead, what's this one's deal anyhow? Crystallize. Arguably one of, if not the most versatile of his forms. He has a solid crystal body, harder than diamond, that allows him to take far more abuse than others. Along with that, he can create and fully manipulate the same types of crystals his body is made of, allowing limited shapeshifting and creating constructs of crystal as we're seeing here. Man! What a moveset! Not to oh hey what's this? Looks like Team Midoriya's plan hasn't quite worked out. Midoriya grimaced as he sliced away at incoming tape and tried to dodge purple sticky balls flying at them. He couldn't fire out shards in a place like this, in this situation. He'd likely end up stabbing a spectator. He also couldn't just create a shield and have them sit there. Blocking themselves off completely would likely be deemed an illegal maneuver, and leaving gaps would keep them blind to Bakugo. Yo, Midoriya? Any idea how to deal with this? Kirishima pondered, and the alien teen gritted his teeth. 'Cause we can't keep this up. Uraraka, what was your weight limit again? The boy asked quickly, and when he got the number from the girl, he turned to the stadium. Staying out of the fight is proving even harder than expected. I forgot my netta existed. Okay, Uraraka touched the ground quick. Right. The brunette did as she was asked, and the crystal alien slammed his foot into the ground, cracks forming around the group. Then suddenly the platform lifted and the teen did his best to use his powers and control its trajectory. We're going to land in front of Todoroki. Momo, defend our blindside. He commanded, and the girl nodded, neither realizing what he called her. The platform disappeared from under them and they fell, bracing for impact. 1 minute left. Quick, Todoroki! Came Tokoyami's voice, and the team looked up to see Ida flinching as ice shot down his legs onto the ground and shot forth. Kaminari was at the back of their group and Todoroki had taken spot as the rider. Must be relying on Ida's engine flames for it to be safe to do that, really risky move. I don't think that little shockwave will work this time. Kirishima called back, worried, as actual icebergs started moving towards them. Midoriya was quiet, putting his foot into the ground and focusing. Deku. Bakugo's pissed-off shouts came and a quick glance showed the blonde flying towards them again. Midoriya. Yamamoto began, worried. The ice was upon them, Bakugo was close and other teams were incoming. They didn't have time. Midoriya's eyes opened and in an instant the group were surrounded by a dome of crystal. It thundered and echoes inside as the ice collided, and explosions tried to tear it apart. Then Midoriya added a finishing touch of spikes on the outside, before opening an entrance behind them, letting them book it. However, right as they got to the entrance, Todoroki's team suddenly started rocketing towards them. Ida carrying them at a speed the boy could barely comprehend. There was no way to dodge. Without another thought, Midoriya reached up and grabbed Momo's arm, quickly trying to encase her entire body in crystal. You'll be okay. Right. She shouted, nervous, as Todoroki reached out for them. No you don't. The heterochromatic teen shouted, annoyed as he reached his left arm out. In his adrenaline, the arm caught fire, surprising him and Midoriya. He was too late though, smashing his hand against crystal and falling from his group, who stumbled as well. Time's up. Midnight's voice called through, and Midoriya's group turned to see Todoroki getting up slowly, inspecting his arm as he did so. Midoriya could have sworn he looked sad. Why was he sad? Beep. 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 Shaking his head, the alien quickly got rid of his crystal constructs around the arena, bringing them back into the daylight. Momo gasped for breath, and the alien quickly helped her down. Beside them, Bakugo face planted into the ground. Kirishima snickered as he commented. Guess he was still standing up there. Whoa. After the flash, Midoriya held onto his friend's shoulders and the girl looked up at him. She still had the headband on. We won? Yeah, we won. He nodded, only to be caught in a tight hug, which he quickly returned. After a moment, Kirishima and Uraraka joined them as they laughed. Oh, and Midoriya? Yamamoto asked, causing him to look up. Her grin grew, but she seemed a little scarier all of a sudden. If you ever do that without asking again, I will do the same to you when you least expect it. Judging by her tone, she was completely serious. Laughing nervously, the boy scratched his neck. Well, Midoriya. A new voice got their attention, and they turned to see Todoroki looking at them. I need to talk to you. In private. I don't know. Kirishima's voice was skeptical, as if he didn't trust the Fire and Ice Teen's intentions, but the Omnitrix bearer placed his hand on his friend's shoulder. It's fine, Kirishima, he assured quickly, before turning to the heterochromatic teen. Okay, Todoroki. Let's talk.
That's it for today. Remember to show your support to the creator of this story if you enjoyed it. If you would like more parts of the story to be uploaded, leave a comment and subscribe to get notified when the story continues. Bye-bye for now, and I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day.